Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone's having a great week and have a great weekend. Florida's got some unusual weather recently. Today it's gorgeous, but this weekend it's going to get down to below 30 at night, I believe on Sunday. So it's quite unusual for Florida, but we're still better off than a lot of other parts of the country because they had some really rough weather last weekend with the snow and ice and all that stuff. But anyway, as people have all experienced, we're definitely having a different type of climate over the last 5 or 10 years than we've had before. I'm going to go over a few different things today. This is kind of more of a personal reflection of some activities that have taken place with me. The first thing I will go over, of course, is real estate. A couple updates on real estate. The Fed just met this week, and they're making no change on the interest rates. That wasn't a surprise. That was what was expected because they had 3 rate decreases over the last 2 months. So it had been expected that nothing was going to change on this meeting. They're still more concerned about inflation. Inflation's not horrible, but it's still higher than their target area. And you're still seeing that as consumers, especially at the grocery store. Meat prices are still out of control and a lot of other things. So we'll see. The next meeting, I think, is probably scheduled for a couple months from now, so we'll see if they do anything on that. On a more positive note, my personal experience real estate-wide in Orlando seems like we're starting to get an increase of activity over the past 10 to 14 days. And that's kind of expected. Excuse me. That's kind of expected in the sense of the holidays are always a little quieter, and then things slowly start to increase as you get into the new year. And so we're at the last couple of days of January now. So I can definitely see a little bit of an increase over, like I said, over the past 10 days or so that would correlate to the middle part of the month. And I think hopefully you'll see a steady progression the next few months. Typically in Central Florida, our busiest months in terms of contracts written are April, May, June, and July. And I don't think that'll change any unless we have some extremely unusual things to do with different things that could happen in the world. This has already been an unusual 12 months, but hopefully nothing new will happen that'll be worse than we've experienced the last 12 months. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed. That new listing that I mentioned to everyone on one of my social media posts earlier this week, we came on the market yesterday with it. It's gotten a tremendous response. The showing activity for the last 24 hours has been really excellent. And I'm pretty optimistic that this house is going to go under contract at a great price within the next 2 to 3 days. Just to give you a summation of that property, it's in the Hunters Creek area. It's on water. It's immaculately maintained. Has some nice upgrades. It has a newer roof, newer air conditioning system, nice size screened room, nice fenced yard. It's all on one level. Kitchen is a great kitchen, got a lot of improvements, and it's very spacious. And that particular property is over 2,100 feet of living. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath. It's extremely well priced at $499,900. So if that seems appealing to you, please call me at your earliest convenience if you want to have an opportunity to look at it and place an offer on it. I can be reached at 407-595-9700, or my email address is marty@floridasells.com. If that house does not meet your requirements and you're ready to chat about real estate, whether you're a seller or buyer, please get a hold of me. I'd love to chat with you, give you some insights into what I think the market's going to be doing, give you some more specific insights into your property. If you're a seller and you want an up-to-date valuation of your home, I can give you a detailed one. There's no charge or obligation whatsoever. And it's a lot more detailed and accurate than any of the online pricing you might see. Those are automated and they're erratic in their nature. So I always tell people to take online valuations with a grain of salt. We also have some other very nice listings that we'd certainly like to share with you. So please call me about those as well. So that's a little bit about the real estate market and where I perceive it going over the next few months. The next thing I wanted to go over, because this has kind of come to the forefront lately, is when a customer looks at purchasing a home, of course, they look at the neighborhood regarding the reputation of the neighborhood. They look at how the schools are rated. They look at the convenience of the neighborhood, meaning that how close is shopping, how far away are the theme parks, how far away is the airport, how far away is downtown, how far away are the beaches, those type of items. The one thing that sometimes is a hidden benefit or a hidden detriment is a next door neighbor. And I've had some interesting situations recently in talking with my customers, as well as a personal situation with the neighbor that you would hope wouldn't be your neighbor. Sometimes, of course, there's no way to know how a neighbor will be, but other times if you get an extreme neighbor, it can be challenging. You know, some of the things that I've come across with neighbors are you get that neighbor that takes terrible care of the outside of their house. You get that neighbor that complains about everything that you're doing in your house, even though you're doing everything normally. You're getting the neighbor that intrudes on your privacy. Unfortunately, with the sophisticated camera equipment that a lot of homeowners have now, some neighbors go over the edge and actually spy on your comings and goings, your yard, your pool area. And sometimes they let it slip out that they've actually seen you doing different things. And that's kind of disconcerting because it's just kind of what I would call a stalking type of behavior. So, of course, nobody's going to be comfortable with that as a neighbor next door. Also, when these things are discussed, if they come up between neighbors, it's funny how the neighbor that has more erratic or extreme behavior tends to have selective memory. And even though you might have a clear record of interaction with that neighbor, for example, via text and stuff, they forget it. And then when they say they didn't do that, you have a record of it. So it's hard to dispute that. You know, we're also experiencing the same thing right now in our society. As you know, there's been, unfortunately, a lot of very unfortunate circumstances in Minnesota with the ICE Division of Immigration. And most of the things that have happened that most people would find very distasteful, to be polite about it, are on video. And they're cut and dry sometimes. I mean, you'll hear a version of them and then you'll look at the video and you say, what are these fellas talking about? You know, for example, the one that's gotten all the publicity lately is the ICU nurse that was murdered in Minnesota. It was just revolting, sad, all the things you can characterize it. And after you've watched that video on multiple occasions, and I hate saying this, but I think somebody needs to tell the truth because this word hasn't been used yet when people explain what happened in Minnesota. This gentleman was executed, which is even worse than a murder. It's almost like an assigned hit. It was just revolting, eye-opening. You feel so bad for the families, relatives, and friends of this gentleman. By all accounts, he was a great nurse, very compassionate, took care of our war veterans in a VA hospital, and did nothing to warrant getting slaughtered like that. The other thing that this brought up that was an interesting dichotomy was the issue of him having a legal holstered weapon on him. And of course, you heard a lot of different opinions on that. The NRA actually fully supported this gentleman. Other people may have felt that carrying a weapon to a situation where you've had a lot of conflict and a lot of protest was not the smartest thing. The only thing you can agree on about this gentleman carrying a weapon was it was completely legal. You know, he was a licensed gun holder, and in his state, open carry was licensed. And he did have the gun holstered as well and never made any movement to cause a threat from, removing the gun from the holster. The one thing it did bring up, as I look at it, is when you hear about everybody, well, not everybody, but there's a certain segment of our population feel that guns should be 100% liberalized. Everybody should have a gun, and it would reduce crime in this country. Well, as I've mentioned on previous podcasts, that's just fool's gold. The more weapons you're going to have, the more incidents and shootings you're going to have. Unfortunately, when you see somebody with a weapon, for some people, it makes them quite uncomfortable. And for other people, like these ICE agents, it gives them, in their minds, a reason to murder somebody. The only thing you can say is open carry, I think, has a lot of pitfalls. And I just think that the logic escapes me. Gun violence, by far, is the number one cause of deaths in the United States. The deaths that don't have to be, they're not deaths from cancer or other diseases, but they're deaths nonetheless. So I think everybody, again, needs to have a long thoughts about that, what their position on gun carrying is. Talk to their elected officials if they feel that the policies are not correct. And all we can do is feel sad for this gentleman and his family. And when you hear the term prayers and wishes, that's not going to bring this gentleman back. And every time we have a tragedy, everybody always says our prayers and thoughts are with the family. Of course they are, but that doesn't do any good to correct this problem. So that's all I'll say about that particular incident. Another thing I wanted to bring up on a social and governmental position is, you've heard me again talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's in charge of our Health and Human Services, and how I feel he's totally an extreme, unqualified, incompetent person to be serving in that position. Well, now there's a chance we could have a measles outbreak in the United States. And again, measles was an extinct disease, and now it's coming back into prominence because of all this false anti-vax information. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion on vaccines, but the data is incontrovertible when it comes to measles, polio, and other diseases that were eradicated due to vaccines. The last thing I saw in the news, which I think was a day or two ago, there was around 800 cases just in South Carolina alone. And there's a bunch of other states that have cases of measles. And there's no question, based on what I've heard the medical community say, this is going to spread. And it tends to spread more exponentially. So to me, it's something of high concern, If you're a family that hasn't vaccinated your family or your kids, I would highly, highly recommend it. The one thing that again has been reiterated when they talk about measles is younger kids are more at risk, and unfortunately you're going to get a small percentage that if they contract measles, it could be life-threatening. And there's no reason why somebody should lose their life for measles because we eradicated it, now it's back. I mean, to scratch your head about it and say, well, what kind of world and society are we living in is an understatement. The most frustrating thing to me is there's so much misinformation. You read all these versions on the internet, and people that have strong extreme opinions, they just embellish things, or they try to reference studies that are A, either never been done, they're B, they're not scientifically correct, they're C, they're on a very small sample size. And the bottom line is there's no reason why we should be bringing these diseases back. What was interesting, I thought, they had a medical expert that I was listening to the other day talking about measles, and he was probably a doctor somewhere in his 50s, mid to late 50s maybe. So he had gotten most of his education and medical school training in the 90s. Well, he was saying they didn't really have training about measles then. I mean, they learned about what had happened historically, but they didn't really have to deal with a lot of training about it because measles was extinct. So he admitted that he had never had personalized experience with measles, and he was just aghast about that we're having measles now in our country. So it's very frustrating to me, but it is what it is. So I just thought I'd bring that up. I'm going to transition to a little bit more fun item, and that's sports. So now we're down to two teams. The New England Patriots will be playing the Seattle Seahawks rather. The game will be next weekend, and it'll be played in San Francisco. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. These last games, especially the one in Denver, in my opinion, were too much climate related. And it takes away from the quality of football when you have extreme weather, blizzard-like conditions, etc. You don't get to see the best of these players. And it gives sometimes, like this Denver game, it gave the defenses a huge advantage because the offenses really couldn't perform up to their standards due to the bad conditions. I think it should be a very good game. As I always try to pick these games, I'm going to select Seattle. I think that Seattle has a little stronger team. I think they're a little bit more balanced than the Patriots. And so I think they'll win. I think it'll be a competitive game. I think at the end of the day, Seattle will win by somewhere between 4 and 7 points. Last weekend's games, I had picked Seattle, and I had also picked, I'm trying to remember now who I picked in the Denver-New England game. I think I picked New England also because Denver didn't have their starting quarterback. So hopefully I can continue my hot streak. So that's all about football. Last but not least is the NBA. We're approaching the All-Star break. Couple things of note. One of the Rookie of the Year candidates, Cooper Flagg, scored 49 points last night for the Dallas Mavericks. He's just, for his age, he's phenomenal. He just turned 19 years old. So this performance of his was a record for anybody his age. He just plays not only with skill, but so much poise, and he's got a tremendously high basketball IQ. Right now, he's favored for the Rookie of the Year honors, and his main competition is a teammate he had last year at Duke, Con Knippel. It just so happened they played against each other last night, and I believe Knippel had 35 points in a very impressive effort as well. So those guys are doing great. It seems like players in the NBA are getting younger and younger and performing with more and more skill. Last but not least is the Orlando Magic. As I mentioned last week, they've really been in a tailspin. They finally won a game a couple nights ago against Miami. I think the jury's definitely still out on Orlando. They've had a lot of injuries this year, but they've way underperformed. They've got a high payroll now. On paper, they've got a lot of good players. And I think if they don't show significant improvement the second half of the year, changes have to be made on the club, whether it's terminating the coach and or their upper management, because there's just something missing so far with the Magic. Right now, they're only 2 games over 500, and when they're losing, they're getting beat sometimes by 15, 20 points. Previously, in the last couple years, they were a very good defensive team. This year, their defense has just been poor, so it's very disappointing. I'm a hometown fan because I live in Orlando, so I hope that they turn it around. I like their coach personally. He seems like a good gentleman, and seems like he's a good communicator with his ball club. But for whatever reason, they're not performing the way you would like them to. So that's all about sports. If you're living in Central Florida, stay warm this weekend for those of us that have plans or a pool. You might want to run your pool more this weekend to avoid any problems with your equipment freezing up. And for those of you that have a lot of plants and shrubberies, it's probably a good idea to cover them. So that's all for today. Everybody be safe. And this is Marty Kaiser out.